Ethan had always believed that family meant safety. Growing up, he and his older sister Harper had shared a complicated but strong bond. Harper had a sharp mind, a confident way of moving through life, and an energy that drew people to her. Ethan, on the other hand, was quieter, careful, and always a little hesitant. Where Harper leaped, he watched. Where Harper commanded attention, he quietly observed. Despite their differences, he had loved her without reservation 2 years ago. When their parents decided to move across the country, Harper had offered him her spare apartment in the city. It was generous, practical, and convenient, a place where he could stay close to his family without losing independence. Ethan had felt lucky. Harper had promised him that rent would be fair and manageable, a number that reflected sibling loyalty rather than market greed. He paid $2,350 a month, a sum that stretched his budget but never broke it. Every month, he handed over the check, always on time, always with a smile. Always trusting Harper's word. For a while, life felt stable. Ethan found comfort in routines, making morning coffee in the small kitchen, walking to the nearby cafe, returning to the apartment with books tucked under his arm, and settling into quiet evenings where the city lights twinkled through the large windows. He kept the apartment clean and tended the little garden Harper had planted on the balcony. He cooked meals, sometimes saving leftovers for Harper when she came home late from work. He felt useful. He felt connected. And he felt close to his sister in a way he had never felt before. As though they were building their own small world amid the chaos of adulthood. Then Harper brought Rowan to dinner. Rowan was Harper's best friend. Or so Ethan thought. But from the moment Rowan stepped into the apartment, there was a warmth and attention that Ethan couldn't ignore. She asked him about his art, about the sketches he kept tucked in a drawer no one ever touched. She listened in a way that made him feel seen, really seen for the first time in years. Her laugh was soft, a musical sound that lingered in the corners of the apartment. Her eyes held a calm curiosity that seemed to pull him out of his own shell. And he caught himself smiling more than he had in months. Ethan tried to ignore it. He told himself it was harmless, that Harper and Rowan were friends, and that noticing Rowan's warmth didn't mean anything. But small moments kept piling up. A glance that lasted a little too long. A quiet compliment on his drawing. A shared joke that made him feel lighter than he had in a long time. Slowly, Ethan realized that he was drawn to Rowan in a way he hadn't expected. And Harper noticed it started with subtle things. Harper would frown when Rowan laughed too much at something Ethan said. She would interrupt conversations or change topics when she caught Rowan looking at him. Sometimes she gave sharp remarks that didn't seem necessary, almost like she wanted to remind him of his place. At first, Ethan shrugged it off. He told himself Harper was just tired or stressed from work. But the tension grew, like a quiet storm building behind the walls of their apartment. Then came the envelope. It appeared under his door one morning, plain and unassuming. Ethan almost didn't notice it, but the weight felt wrong. It was thick, heavier than a single letter should be, and the type of paper screamed official. With a sense of growing unease, he opened it. Inside was a rental agreement. The first line made his stomach drop. $7,100 per month. Ethan froze, unsure if he was reading correctly. His mind raced through numbers, budgets, and possibilities. Had he misread a decimal? Was this some cruel joke? Did Harper think he could suddenly afford such a sum? His pulse quickened as the absurdity settled in. He rushed to Harper, clutching the paper, and found her in the kitchen, sipping coffee. Her expression was calm, almost too calm. As though she had been expecting this moment all along. "It's the updated rent," she said simply. Ethan's throat felt tight. "Updated. Harper, this is insane. I can't afford this. What happened?" She looked at him with a smirk that made his stomach churn. "You've been underpaying for years. It's just correcting the balance. You're an adult. Figure it out." He stumbled back, shaking his head. "Adult Harper, I've been independent my whole life. I pay my own bills. I work hard. Why are you doing this?" She shrugged lightly, as though the question was irrelevant. "Because it's fair." Ethan felt a cold wave of shock. Fair? He could barely speak. The words caught in his throat. He had always trusted her, relied on her, believed in the promise that she wanted him close for family reasons, not for profit. Now, she was telling him that everything he had counted on, every moment of comfort, was subject to her whim. In desperation, he called their parents. Surely they would understand. Surely they would see that Harper had gone too far. But their voices were calm, almost detached. And that calm hurt more than Harper's smirk. Well, Ethan, his father said, Harper owns the property. She has the right to charge you whatever she wants. His mother added, maybe this is good for you. You've been too dependent. Maybe it's time you learn to manage more on your own. Ethan's hands shook as he hung up the phone. Dependent. He had thought he was making choices, living responsibly, paying bills on time, keeping life steady. He had trusted his family. He had believed in their promises. Now, the very people who should have protected him were telling him to accept it as normal. That night, he sat at the kitchen table, staring at the city lights through the window. His mind raced, circling over every moment, every memory, every word exchanged with Harper and Rowan. He thought about how safe he had felt in the apartment, how easy it had been to exist in the rhythm he had built. And now that safety was gone. A buzz on his phone startled him. It was Rowan. Ethan. Harper said something today that worried me. Are you okay? Can we talk? Ethan stared at the message. His chest tightened. What had Harper said? Why was Rowan worried? And why did this sudden cruel rent hike feel like it wasn't really about money at all? As the evening stretched into night, Ethan found himself pacing the apartment. He tried to think logically, what could he do? Could he fight her? Could he move? Could he ask his parents again? But every scenario seemed impossible. The number alone was astronomical compared to what he could pay. And Harper's calm certainty made it clear that resistance would be futile. He thought about Rowan again. How her presence had made him feel seen. How her smile had been a small comfort in a life that suddenly felt chaotic. And he realized something painful. Harper's actions were not just about rent. There was control, jealousy, and perhaps fear. Perhaps Harper felt threatened by the connection Ethan had with Rowan. Perhaps this was her way of keeping him close in a way he hadn't expected. Ethan felt the weight of betrayal settle deep in his chest. Not loud, not dramatic, but heavy and constant. And alongside that, a strange flickering hope. Rowan had reached out. She cared enough to ask. She had noticed the tension, understood something was wrong, and wanted to be there. And so, in the quiet of the apartment that had suddenly felt smaller and colder, Ethan typed back, I'm not okay. Can we meet? As he sent the message, he didn't know what the future would hold. He didn't know if he could stay in the apartment, survive the rent hike, or mend the growing distance with his sister. But he knew one thing. His life had changed forever. And it wasn't just about money. It was about trust, love, and the fragile balance of family ties. For the first time in months, he felt a spark of determination. He would figure this out, somehow, and maybe, just maybe, Rowan could be a light in the darkness Harper had cast over his life. Rowan shook her head. Ethan, that's not fair. Not at all. You've been responsible. You've worked hard. You've been living there in good faith, helping her out sometimes, taking care of the apartment. And they're just letting her do this. Ethan swallowed. I don't understand. I trusted her. I thought she wanted me nearby because she cared, but now it's like everything we had, the trust, the closeness is gone. She doesn't even hide it anymore. Rowan reached across the table, touching his hand lightly. It's not gone, Ethan. It's just complicated. Maybe she's acting out of fear, jealousy, or maybe something else. I've known her for years. She's controlling sometimes, but she still loves you. In her own way. Ethan looked into her eyes. For a brief moment, he forgot the anger, the frustration, and the fear. He felt seen, not as a tenant, not as a younger brother, not as someone to manipulate, just Ethan. The Ethan who had quietly loved art, who had spent nights sketching, who had cared more about family than himself. And Rowan saw all of it. They talked for hours, moving through the cafe's small tables, sipping coffee and watching the city wake. Rowan listened to every detail. The envelope, Harper's smirk, the parents' indifferent response. She asked questions that helped Ethan untangle his thoughts. Questions that made him realize the pain wasn't just about money, it was about trust, family, and a subtle but real sense of betrayal. By the time they left the cafe, Ethan felt a strange mix of clarity and dread. He knew he had to face Harper, but he also knew he couldn't do it alone. Rowan offered to help, not by confronting Harper directly, but by being there as a support, as someone who reminded him that not everyone in his life was willing to manipulate him. Back at the apartment, Harper was waiting as though she had been expecting him. Her smirk hadn't faded. Ethan's stomach twisted, but he straightened his back and met her gaze. "Ethan," she said casually, "back so soon?" He took a deep breath. "We need to talk about the rent." Harper tilted her head, sipping her tea. "I thought we already did. It's fair. I've explained it. Market rate. You should be grateful." Ethan's fists clenched, but he forced himself to stay calm. "Grateful? Harper, I've been paying rent for 2 years at a price we agreed on. I've treated this place like my own. And suddenly, it's $7,100. That's not fair. That's punishment." Harper's expression hardened, the smirk becoming a shield. "It's not punishment. It's reality. You can either pay or leave. Simple." Ethan wanted to scream, to cry, to shake her until she understood. But he didn't. Instead, he spoke quietly, firmly. "This isn't just about money, Harper. It's about trust. It's about family. And right now, I feel like neither exists with you." Harper's eyes flickered for a moment, something unspoken, but she said nothing. She turned back to her tea. As if his words hadn't been heard at all, Ethan left the apartment that night, walking aimlessly through the streets. The city lights blurred in his vision as he tried to make sense of what had happened. He thought about his parents' words. Independent, responsible maybe. They were right in one sense. He had to decide for himself what was next. But independence didn't mean loneliness. It didn't mean betrayal from the people who were supposed to love him. Over the next week, Ethan explored his options. He looked at apartments, calculating what he could afford. Each number reminded him of Harper's smirk, of her confidence in his supposed helplessness. But every door he visited also reminded him that he wasn't powerless. He could find a new place, rebuild his life, and protect himself. Yet, even with that clarity, a part of him longed for reconciliation. Harper was his sister. They had shared years, memories, and family moments that couldn't be erased. And deep down, he wondered if there was a way to fix things without walking away entirely. Meanwhile, Rowan stayed in touch. She helped him navigate emotions he hadn't fully confronted: anger, disappointment, confusion, and even the subtle ache of longing. Her texts and calls were constant reminders that someone believed in him, someone understood him, and someone cared. And as he spent more time with her, a quiet tension grew, an attraction he couldn't ignore. Her presence was calming, but it also stirred something deep inside him. A feeling he hadn't let himself experience in years. One evening, Rowan suggested they meet at the park near his apartment. The sun was setting, casting golden light across the benches and the fountain. Ethan arrived early, pacing nervously. When Rowan appeared, she smiled, and he felt the familiar flutter in his chest. "Ethan," she said softly, "I've been thinking. Maybe you should confront Harper differently. Not with anger, but with honesty. Tell her how this makes you feel. Not just about rent. About trust. About family. About us." He hesitated. "Us." Rowan shook her head, a faint laugh in her eyes. "I mean, about feelings. About what's happening between you, her, and everything that's tangled up in this situation. You can't ignore it." Ethan realized she was right. The rent hike wasn't just financial, it was emotional. Harper's actions had exposed fractures in the family, but it had also made him see what he wanted, what he felt, and who mattered to him. Rowan mattered. And perhaps, finally, he was beginning to see the difference between manipulation and care. When he returned to the apartment later that night, he sat at the kitchen table staring at the papers Harper had left. He could move out. He could fight her. He could even accept the rent increase if he had to. But what he needed most was clarity about his relationship with Harper, with his parents, and with Rowan. The next morning, Harper arrived home earlier than usual. Ethan braced himself for confrontation, but she didn't mention the rent at first. She spoke casually about work, about errands, about her day. But Ethan noticed the same subtle tension, the same sharpness under her calm. Finally, he spoke. "Harper, we need to talk about all of this. About why you did it. About why you think it's fair." Harper paused, staring at him as if seeing him clearly for the first time. Then, slowly, she smirked. "It's simple, Ethan. Life isn't always fair. Sometimes you learn lessons the hard way. Consider this a lesson." Ethan felt his stomach tighten. He realized she wasn't going to admit to jealousy or fear or any motive beyond control. She was keeping her power, her advantage. And his only choice was to navigate it carefully. That night, as he texted Rowan, he realized one thing. He couldn't do this alone. He needed support, clarity, and perhaps a new path that didn't rely on Harper's approval. Rowan's message appeared almost instantly. "I'll help." "You're not alone, Ethan. Not now. Not ever." And for the first time since the envelope arrived, he felt a flicker of hope. Ethan didn't know what the future held. He didn't know if he could save the relationship with his sister or if he would find a new apartment, or if the growing tension with Rowan would evolve into something more. But he knew this. He would no longer be a passive observer in his own life. He would fight for trust, for fairness, and for the connections that truly mattered. The morning after his conversation with Harper, Ethan felt the apartment differently. The walls, once suffocating, now seemed to echo possibilities. The weight of the rent hike still pressed on him, but the uncertainty no longer felt like a prison. With Rowan by his side through texts, calls, and small meetings in the city, he realized he didn't have to face Harper's power alone. He started the day by making coffee in the small kitchen, letting the aroma fill the room. Normally, mornings were rushed, tense, and silent, but today there was a quiet rhythm. He set his laptop on the table, reviewing apartment listings, budgets, and alternative options. He had no illusions. Moving out would be difficult. He could barely imagine packing up the apartment he had treated like his own home. The place where he had laughed, cried, and sketched his dreams. But it was necessary. He had to reclaim control over his life. Rowan arrived later that afternoon. She brought a small gift, a sketchbook with thick, soft pages. "For new beginnings," she said. Ethan smiled, feeling warmth spread through his chest. Rowan's presence reminded him that there was more to life than conflict with Harper. There was care, support, and even a gentle hint of attraction that had grown stronger over the past weeks. "Ethan," she said, settling into the chair opposite him, "you've been carrying so much. Maybe you're scared of leaving. But sometimes the only way to protect yourself is to step forward." He nodded, thinking about the lease, the number Harper had written in bold, and the way his parents had brushed him aside. The unfairness of it had cut deep, but Rowan's words reminded him that fairness wasn't always given. Sometimes it had to be claimed. Over the next few days, Ethan began preparing for the possibility of leaving. He packed slowly, carefully, trying to preserve memories without holding on to resentment. He removed sketches from the walls, wrapped dishes, and sorted through books. Every item reminded him of moments spent in this space. Mornings with coffee, evenings talking with Harper before the smirk, afternoons watching the sunlight hit the balcony. Memories made him ache. But they also reminded him that life continued outside these walls. During one of these afternoons, Harper returned unexpectedly. Ethan froze as she stepped inside, carrying her laptop and looking unusually calm. "Ethan," she said, voice neutral, "I wanted to check if everything's okay. I know the rent situation has been difficult." He hesitated, unsure if he should respond with anger, explanation, or silence. but something in her tone felt different. Not cruel, not sharp, but careful. He realized she might be testing him, gauging his reaction, or even reconsidering her approach. "I'm okay," he said slowly, choosing his words. "I'm figuring things out. I've started exploring my options." Harper raised an eyebrow. "Options? Moving out?" "Yes," he admitted, "but it's not just about money. It's about trust, about family, and about what's fair. I can't stay in a place where I feel manipulated. I need to live with clarity and respect." For a long moment, Harper said nothing. Then, finally, she set her laptop down and crossed her arms. "Ethan, I didn't realize. Maybe I overstepped. I wanted you close, but I also wanted to control things in a way I thought was right. Maybe I went too far." Ethan's heart skipped. He had not expected an apology, not so soon, and certainly not without confrontation. He studied her carefully, noticing a softness beneath the smirk he had seen so many times. "Harper, you did overstep, but I understand that you care. I just need to feel that care, not manipulation." She nodded slowly. "I get that now. I really do." Relief washed over Ethan, but he knew this was only the beginning. Trust didn't rebuild overnight. The rent issue still hung between them like a storm cloud. But for the first time, he felt that Harper might understand. That evening, he met Rowan at a small art gallery downtown. They wandered among paintings and sculptures. But their conversation turned inevitably to the apartment Harper. "And the changes in Ethan's life, you're handling this better than I expected," Rowan said softly. "I know it's hard, but you're taking control, not letting anyone, especially Harper, dictate your life. That's admirable." Ethan looked at her, feeling an ache he hadn't allowed himself to explore fully. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Rowan. You've been a constant in the chaos." She smiled, warmth in her eyes. "You'd do fine on your own. But I'm glad to be here, and I'm not going anywhere." The words settled in him, steady and gentle. He realized that the connection he had been avoiding, the attraction, the comfort, the trust, was real. And it didn't have to compete with family tension. Rowan offered him a sense of hope he hadn't known he needed. Over the next week, Ethan made his decision. He would move out of Harper's apartment. He found a modest apartment a few blocks away. It wasn't as spacious, and it didn't have the balcony garden, but it was his. A space where he could make his own rules, control his environment, and rebuild his life without Harper's shadow looming over him. He packed the last boxes with care, saying goodbye to the apartment that had been both home and prison. Harper came by one last time, and for the first time in weeks, there was no smirk. "Ethan," she said quietly, "I'm sorry. Truly, I didn't see how much my actions hurt you. I want you to be happy, even if it's not with me here." Ethan nodded, feeling a bittersweet ache. "Thank you, Harper. I hope we can rebuild trust slowly, but for now, I need to live my own life." She smiled faintly, and for the first time it felt genuine. She stepped back, leaving him with the door, the boxes. The first sense of independence he had truly felt in years. Rowan arrived later that evening to help him move in. They carried boxes together, laughed at small mishaps, and settled into the new apartment. Ethan felt a lightness he hadn't known in months. The city outside hummed with possibility, and for the first time, he felt in control of his destiny. After the last box was unpacked, they sat on the small balcony of the new apartment. Ethan handed Rowan the sketchbook she had given him, and she opened it carefully. Leafing through the first few sketches he had drawn in secret, "These are beautiful, Ethan," she said softly. "You have a gift. Don't let anyone, family, friends, or anyone diminish it." He smiled, warmth spreading through him. "Thank you, Rowan, for being here. For everything." She reached across, lightly touching his hand again. "Always. And I want to see more of your art. Maybe we can even collaborate." Ethan's heart leaped. The idea of sharing something so personal with her, of trusting her with his dreams, felt like sunlight after a long storm. He realized that the tension, the heartbreak, And the confusion with Harper had opened a door to something he hadn't dared to imagine: a connection, a partnership, and a sense of home that wasn't tied to obligation or manipulation. In the weeks that followed, Ethan settled into the new apartment. He focused on his work, on creating art, and on building his life with Rowan by his side. Harper reached out occasionally with small gestures of apology and moments of genuine care. Slowly, they rebuilt their relationship, not perfect, not without distance, but real. Ethan also learned to navigate his emotions. The anger toward Harper softened, replaced by understanding. He recognized that her actions, though hurtful, came from her own fears, insecurities, and desire for control. He forgave her not because she had fully earned it, but because he needed peace for himself. Through it all, Rowan remained a steady presence. Their relationship grew quietly, with subtle romance, shared moments, and the gentle thrill of discovery. They laughed, shared meals, walked through the city streets, even spent nights sketching together, leaning close, sharing ideas and dreams. The intimacy was tender, emotional, and deeply fulfilling. By the end of the year, Ethan looked back on the chaos: the rent hike, the betrayal, the tension with Harper, and realized that it had led him to a stronger, more independent version of himself. He had faced unfairness, navigated family strife, and discovered support, love, and trust in unexpected places. Sitting on his balcony one evening with Rowan, watching the city lights flicker like stars, Ethan felt a profound sense of gratitude. Life had thrown challenges at him, but he had faced them with courage, clarity, and the quiet strength of someone who refused to let manipulation define him. And as Rowan leaned her head on his shoulder, he knew one thing: he was no longer a passive observer in his life. He was living it fully, with love, trust, and the knowledge that home wasn't just a place, was where you felt safe, seen, and truly alive. Ethan smiled softly. Harper's smirk, the parents' indifference, and the absurd rent increase had all been painful lessons. But through them, he had found resilience, clarity, and the beginnings of a love that promised balance and tenderness.